Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a big show for you. We're going to go over some of the first four March Madness games. We had a couple of games happen yesterday, including Virginia losing to Colorado State and Buffalo losing in their first round, in their first four matchup as well. Excuse me, Howard, not Buffalo. I apologize. But we're also going to talk a little bit about the death of yet another power conference in the college football landscape. The ACC is on the brink of collapse yet, joining the Pac-12, which collapsed last season, leaving us really with a Power 3 and a power vacuum as everything kind of floods more towards the Big Ten and the SEC. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Seoul series happening in South Korea, Seoul, South Korea. The first game was today. And we'll preview a little bit of March Madness as the tournament begins officially tomorrow. But yeah, before we get too far into it, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give. If you leave a message, it'll pop up on the bottom of the screen. There for a minute for me, you, everyone else that is watching to see. Again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show with March Madness. March Madness is right around the corner. March Madness officially began yesterday. You still have time to get your brackets in if you haven't done that yet. But last night, there were two of the first four games took place. That being Virginia and Colorado State on that 10 seed line, and a 16 seed battle between Howard and in a 16 seed battle where Howard ended up losing. And I want to start there because that was the first game of the night, the first game of the tournament, and it looked like it was going to be a blowout. It looked like Howard did not have a shot, and that they were just completely outmatched. But as the second half wore on, they went on this huge 14-2 run to get the game within one, get the game within two. And Wagner just was sloppy with the ball. Howard really picked up on the intensity, and Wagner was really struggling with the defense and shooting. But in the end, there was one possession left. Howard was down by two, and they, as one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the nation, decided to take a three instead of going for the tie. So they take one shot, and it bounces off the rim. They get a rebound. The second shot, they kick it back up to the top of the key, and it looks like he's almost fouled. If you guys have seen this clip, he goes down. It looks like he's trying to draw a foul. He does miss the three, but they get one more shot. Once again, an offensive rebound. Incredible rebounding. Huge possession for them. They get three shots there at the end, trying to take the lead and win the game, and they miss all of them. We had a shot for our first game to be the first buzzer beater of March. Our first official buzzer beater of March. I know we had a couple in the tournaments as we led into March Madness, but it was a really competitive game. Wagner is a 16 seed that's going on to face, I believe, North Carolina in North Carolina. So it's going to be kind of a home game for North Carolina. But the the more interesting game to me was that game on the 10 seed line, the game between Virginia and Colorado State. And when you have a team like Virginia, you know what it's going to be, right? You know it's going to be that slow defensive game, control the pace. That's just how Virginia plays. Everyone knows that's how Virginia plays. That's how they want to play. But it only works really when they're making shots. And no matter how great your defense is, you cannot win a game. You cannot win a game when you go 10 minutes without making a basket, without scoring a single point. Virginia had a period of time from 9:39 in the first half to 17:01 in the second half. So that is 12 minutes of game time. 12 minutes of game time where they did not score a single point. You go look at that chart, that graph that they have on the app with the points. It's just a straight line, and they were kept in the game that entire time by their defense. Their defense played incredible, but they missed 18 shots in a row. Did not score a point for 12 minutes. You're not going to win any basketball games like that. And it's not like this is a surprise, because this is the kind of basketball that we've been accustomed to with Virginia. It's it's the kind of basketball that we take a look at and you're like, yeah, that's Virginia basketball. That's the way they want to play. That's Tony Bennett, right? And they won a championship that way, right? But they also lost to a 16 seed that way. They've just, it's one of those things that you start to question. At least this game really made me start to question, is it time for them to make a change? Because the way that it's going, the way college basketball is going nowadays, their defense has not been elite enough in the last 5 years for them to play this style, and they need to be able to score. You know, it's great to have an elite defense, but if you can't put points, if you can't put the ball in the basket, you're not going to win a game regardless. You know, you need to, at the end of the day, the way that you win the game is by scoring more points than the other team. And you can do that in a lot of ways. Defense is a great way to do that, because then you don't have to score as much. And they play to their strengths. Virginia plays to their strengths, but if they cannot hit the broadside of the barn, they're not going to win a game. And I think it's a little early. I know I just kind of went on this rant, but I think it's a little early to call for the head of Tony Bennett. He's been an incredible coach. Like I said, he won that national championship in 2019. But it is time to think about it, I think, because as good of a coach as Tony Bennett is, he is choosing to play this way. Like, it isn't like this is the cards he's dealt and he's making these elite defenses out of it. This is how he's choosing to recruit. He's choosing to recruit these guys that will play this defense but are lacking offensively. And if they can get an offensive star in there, and I'm sure they should be able to, you know, they're a premier program. You know, they aren't some smaller school, some school that isn't able to pull these massive recruits. They should be able to get some guys that can score. But they just have not been able to do that. They've been incapable of doing that recently. And that goes on the recruiting, you know, and as good as they played, I mean, they made it to the NCAA tournament. Technically, they were on the 10 seed line, and they did not win that play-in game. I'm not sure they were deserving of getting in, and it showed. I mean, it was just awful. That was just awful basketball to watch. Sitting there watching them brick after brick after brick after brick. It was just not fun to watch. Not good basketball. We are looking forward to more exciting basketball tonight. There's 2 more play-in games, and then on Thursday, we have the official beginning of the tournament when everything really branches out and starts going wild. But yeah, coming up in our next segment, we are going to talk about those games today. We're going to talk about who I think is going to win, some previews of that, as well as some interesting games for Thursday. Stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get waiting to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my sound. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits some losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the awful performance by Virginia yesterday, as well as Wagner beating, uh, Wagner beating Howard in the first four. In this segment, we are going to do some previews of March Madness. Talk a little bit about the first four games going on, as well as some of the major matchups on Thursday. But yeah, before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give. You leave a message with that tip or donation. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there for you, me, everyone else to see. I appreciate everything that you do give. Again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we are going to be talking about March Madness preview. We're talking about the first four games that are going on today, and there's two of them. There's a 16 seed game and there is a 10 seed game, filling out that final slots of the bracket tonight. First thing we're going to start off in the 16 seeds at 6:40. So right after our show wraps up here, the Grambling takes on Montana State. 16 seed matchup for the right to play Purdue. These guys, both of these teams won their conferences. When you take a look at these two teams, I've got Montana State slightly ahead of them. This is going to be a pretty tight game. Montana State just has the offensive firepower that the Grambling State does not. Grambling State, doesn't quite put up as many points per game, although they do have the ability to. You go look at the last five results from each of these teams. Montana State is putting up 85, 74, 91, 76, and 104. And Grambling is putting up 75, 65, 56, 84, and 74. So there's about a 10-point difference in each of this. They just don't quite have the offense. Their defense is better than Montana State's is. But when you're looking at this matchup, this shot making is going to be very important, and I think the main difference there is going to be the points. So I'm taking Montana State in this first one. Of course, the 16 seed games, as much as they are important to pay attention to, it doesn't matter quite as much as these 10 seed games, because most likely those 16 seeds are going to lose in that first round to the 1 seed they play. Now, recently, that has started to change. We saw last year Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue. Obviously, we just finished talking about Virginia, who lost for the first time to a 16 seed in 2018 to UMBC. But the 10 seed game is really interesting because I think the winner of this game has a really good shot of making a run in the tournament. You talk about Colorado versus Boise State. Both of these teams have both of these teams are really good. Both of them were spent time ranked in the top 25 this season. They both have elite scorers at the top. KJ Simpson for the Buffaloes and Tyler Danghart for Boise State. You take a look at each of these two teams. There are a couple things that when you're playing against each other that you want to take a look at. Now, Colorado is favored by just a little bit, but I think Boise's going to be able to take this one. You take a look again. One of the most important things for me when I'm looking at it is the all around team. Turnovers are super important, and when we're talking about a team like Boise, they just take care of the ball. It's very important, especially in these March Madness games, that the the thing with Colorado being Colorado's a very good team because their offense here and both of these teams are going to go face Florida in that first round of the NCAA tournament. Both of these teams, I think, probably beat Florida. Florida is a team that you know made it to that SEC championship game, but they have struggled with defense, and their scoring isn't quite on par with some of those higher tier opponents. I think both of these teams are better than Florida. So whoever comes out of this game, I think is going to make it at least into the second round, where I believe they go play Marquette. So taking a look at this matchup, uh, it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out of this. The main talking points as we're looking off is it's again that offense, the 3 point shooting there, .35% shooter. There's multiple people shooting 35%, 30% or better from beyond the arc, and that's really going to be the main advantage there for Boise is that 3 point shooting. Uh, you know, not to say that the Buffaloes can't shoot it because they have a couple really elite shooters on their team as well. One of them is shooting 45%. That's KJ Sampson. Uh, that's from three, and then they have a couple other guys shooting around 50% from the field. So it's not uh, completely out of the question that they win this game. I think this is going to come down to the wire. This 10 seed game here. Um, I do think Boise is going to pull this one out though. It's a very tight game. I wouldn't be surprised if uh, it went to overtime. Honestly, because these two teams are very close to each other in the standings. Uh, Including a game with Michigan State and Mississippi State. This is a really interesting matchup to me. It's technically the first game of the day um, on Thursday, uh, where you have Tom Izzo, one of the best coaches in this current era, maybe even of all time, taking on Mississippi State, a Michigan State team that honestly is way overseeded. They're not a 9 seed. I almost had them missing the entire bracket when I was looking through bracketology stuff. They were in my first four out. I did not even have them in my March Madness tournament, but they get in as a 9 seed, which was shocking to me. You know, 19 and 14. There's better teams out there that could have taken that. I mean, I know we talked a little bit about Virginia. I think Virginia might have been better than them. I don't know. I don't think either of those two teams should have made the tournament. A team like Indiana State from from Arch Madness there, who lost to Drake in the championship game, who just missed it. I think having one of those guys in there, either replacing Virginia or replacing Michigan State, maybe not exactly on those seed lines, but I think that would have made for better basketball. They're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but it is important. So that's the first game there. I think Mississippi State should handle business pretty easy, but you never know because Tom Izzo does have that experience. He has the tournament experience, and that is something that you can't just get. Michigan State is a scrappy team. They're not a bad team. I don't by any means. They're just I don't think they're a top 60. I don't think they're 9 seed worthy. I don't think they're a top 36 team in the entire nation. Maybe you slot them in as like a 10 seed or a first 4 team, kind of like where you had Virginia. But that's beyond the point. The bracket has been released for a couple days now. The other big game on Thursday that I was really interested by, Nevada versus Dayton. These are both from smaller conferences. Both of them really excel at shooting the ball. Dayton especially. They can shoot it from anywhere. And Nevada has a very, very is a very good team. Both of these teams only had 7 losses on the season. And this is going to be either a if Nevada can control the pace of play, I think they can walk away with this. Dayton wants to play a little faster, and if they can get their tempo going, then they will absolutely win this game. But this is going to be another one of those fun matchups here to keep an eye on, take a look at on Thursday. And then the last one that I wanted to highlight for Thursday would be Kansas taking on Samford. And this one has a lot riding on it because Kansas is without their best player, Kevin McCullers. He announced yesterday that he will not be participating in the tournament. I believe he has a leg injury, something he has been dealing with for a while. But taking on a team like Samford, who, like a lot of these mid-major teams that make the tournament, are snipers. They can shoot from just about anywhere. They've got incredible range, and they play fast. They play aggressive. I believe they play a press style, and they go deep. And Kansas, being without their top players, going against a team as high energy and high octane as Samford could really cause some trouble. I think they're on high upset alert, especially without Kevin McCullers. If McCullers was there, I think they win this pretty handily. Not handily, but I think they win this. But without him there, it's going to be a lot tougher, especially with the pace that Samford plays at. The lack of depth is really going to hurt Kansas. Not even not having one of your best players, but not having that depth to help relieve the scorers of what's going on in Samford's press. But let me know what you think of these games on Thursday. If there's any of them that stick out to you, I'd love to hear. We'll cover a little bit more in depth on those tomorrow when the games are actually about to start. But in our next segment, we're going to transition out of a NCAA tournament and move into the college football world, where the ACC might be on the verge of collapse. There was a big Clemson has just sued the ACC along with Florida State to get out of it. So we're going to take a look at that in just a second. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we just finished covering March Madness. We talked about some previews. We talked about what happened earlier yesterday, as well as what's coming up today and tomorrow in the tournament. Excuse me. In this segment, we are going to move into the world of college football. Big news today. Clemson is joining Florida State in suing to get out of the ACC in what kind of feels like the end of yet another power conference. 2 in 2 years is crazy. We kind of see the establishment of college football collapsing, becoming more and more monopolized, I guess, with the SEC and the Big Ten at the top, and everything kind of just flowing off of those two giants. So, before we get too far into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. I apologize. Leave a tip or donation. We appreciate everything that you do give. Again, leave a message there. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else watching to see. Appreciate anything that you do give. Again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the world of college football, the end of the ACC. The ACC, one of the power conferences, who not even 5 years ago, was winning and competing with the SEC and the Big Ten for national championships, with Clemson and Trevor Lawrence winning a couple of them. And now we see how fast they've fallen off. And this kind of goes to my greater point that we made last time we talked about college football, which is the fact that falling into this trap of having these two major conferences and no one else kind of puts you in danger of not having good quality football or paying way too much for bad quality football. Because the ACC, it kind of fell off really recently. We've seen it. Now, granted, they only had one team at the top, and the SEC and the Big Ten each have 2, possibly 3. Ohio State and Michigan, Georgia and Alabama. You could make an argument for a couple other teams in the SEC, but really those are the 4 that are owning college football, especially with the way that these conferences have negotiated contracts through 2031. So, taking a look at all of that, the ACC is crumbling. Florida State has won it out. Florida State and Clemson were the 2 big powers in the ACC. They were also, you remember Trevor Lawrence winning with Clemson, but Florida State made it to the first ever college football playoff with Jameis Winston. So those two are the powerhouse, and obviously this last season they went undefeated and did not make the playoffs, which is a whole nother can of worms. But this is why they won out, because the ACC, the way that the committee is looking at it based off that, is saying that it sucks. It doesn't matter if you won all those games. It's not a good conference. You're not going to make it. Which really kind of that was the first straw, or the last straw in the ACC. They're going to keep kicking, keep fighting, because this is a lawsuit. They're going to fight it out. We're going to see what the courts say. But I think they're going to be able to get out of this. And they're going to go and they're going to join the SEC, and they're going to leave the door open for the rest of the ACC to leave with them. Maybe Miami comes over. Maybe Virginia leaves, joins the Big Ten. Maybe Virginia Tech comes with them. There's a lot of big schools in the ACC that could crumble, and the ACC could do a lot to fix this. They could bring in some schools in the region, some Sunbelt teams, some CAA teams that make sense geographically and have good programs. There's a couple different teams that could fit that bill. A James Madison, for instance, a COFC who just made the tournament. There's some quality teams that can make this jump to the ACC. It's not completely out of the question for them, but the ACC is crumbling and they need to do something quick. And filling up the conference with those brands is not necessarily going to save the ACC, because these are still mid-major brands to a lot of people. You need to add them to a power conference that actually is a power conference for them to have any respect. If the ACC does decide to go that route, and after Clemson, Florida State, their big brands are able to leave, and they fill it in with some of these smaller mid-major programs, group of five teams, it's not necessarily going to be better, because then they're going to be looked at as one of those group of five conferences. Regardless of how many members they do keep, if you fill it up with a bunch of group of five teams, that's how people are going to look at it. They're going to look at you as a bunch of group of five teams. You need to let those guys and let those teams in slowly. And there's nothing wrong with group of five teams moving up. I'm all for it. But if you let 10 group of five teams into a conference that just has like 3 remaining of the old ACC, what are people going to say? Are people going to say, oh, the ACC is just as strong as it was? They're going to keep looking at it like it's a weaker conference. And we see this all the time. It happens in a lot of sports. There's just the decline of it. But the more concerning thing is the fact that this is all happening so quick, because the entirety of college football landscape is collapsing right now. Obviously, you have the Pac-12 that collapsed. There's just 2 teams left in it technically, and they're both kind of independents at this point. You have the ACC with its 2 biggest members trying to leave. Not something that is definitely going to happen, but Florida State has been trying to get out of there for quite some time. And when their contract is up, they're not coming back regardless, unless something crazy and unforeseen happens. Florida State is done, regardless of what happens by the end of this contract. So, keeping a look out at the future of the ACC, it's not a conference that may survive. It might go the way of the Pac-12, where it just disintegrates, keeps getting poached, and that would suck. Again, I don't like to be that person that's against change, but when we're seeing college football monopolize and become 2 leagues, it leaves behind all the little guys. And I think that's what makes college sports so special. Having those little guys that, can compete with these big guys every once in a while. That's what makes the magic of the NCAA tournament. That's what makes it so beautiful to watch. That's what makes it such a perfect competition. And college football doesn't have that exact same thing, but they have similar stuff. You schedule these opponents, these group of 5 teams, and every once in a while they get a win. But when you're trying to make schedules with that, you're not picking great opponents. So when you have great group of 5 teams, they're not going to be able to play great Power 5 teams. Or I guess Power 4, maybe Power 3 at this point. I don't know how to refer to that in football. But it's a very delicate situation in college sports. There's not one way to handle this, say, oh, absolutely, this is how we're going to fix it. There's no way to do that, because everything is changing so quick. And NIL and the transfer portal is here arriving at all the same times. So there's like 5 different things that are all pouring into one issue. And I don't want this to say that NIL is the worst thing, because I'm a big fan of NIL, what it does for athletes, getting them paid for their images, for them, letting them be profit off themselves is a great thing. I feel like everyone should just be able to do that. But the fact that it's new and it's coming in at the same time as the transfer portal exploding, as the Power 5 crumbling, as the SEC and the Big Ten all making both making power moves to become heads of the table. There's just so many things happening in college football that are all coming together at once. And if a couple of these things happened just a couple years before this, or, not all at the same time, I think they would have been fine. But the fact of the matter is that it's all happening at once. and I'm not sure how college football is going to survive, especially in the turmoil it already had been in the season. They made a couple rule changes that basically just were for commercials, and eventually it's going to ruin the sport. Uh, but that's not an issue right now. Right now uh, we just need to figure out what's going on with the ACC. It's probably the end of it. We're looking at a Power Three in the next couple seasons. ACC is probably going to split in two. Half of those teams, the northern teams in the ACC, Virginia, Virginia Tech's, they're going to go to the Big Ten most likely, join up in that geographic region. And then Florida State, Clemson, those guys are going to go. Miami, they're going to go check out they're going to go probably join the SEC. Those are big brands. So I'm curious to see exactly how that all plays out. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of this. But in our fourth and final segment, the first game of the MLB season started today. The Dodgers and the Padres played the first game, the opening game, in Seoul, South Korea. So we're going to break all of that down, everything that happened in there, big takeaways, Shohei Ohtani's debut as a Dodger, and much, much more coming up in our next segment. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this break. If you were just tuning in, we've talked about March Madness, some previews, some stuff that went on last night, as well as some of the big news with the ACC's potential collapse, with Florida State and Clemson now joining in a lawsuit to get out of the ACC, what that means for college football, as well as the future of the ACC and everything involved in that. In this segment, we are going to talk about some baseball. The first game of the season happened today. 5-2 win by the Los Angeles Dodgers over the San Diego Padres. We'll talk about all of that, some of the stuff that happened in there. The Seoul Series is kicking off the MLB season just about 10 days before opening day begins. But yeah, before we get into all of that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything that you do give. If you leave a message with that tip or donation, it'll go across the bottom of the screen there for me, you, and everybody else to see. Appreciate everything that you do give. Once again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Like I was saying, we are going to get into our fourth and final segment here, that being about the Seoul Series. The Seoul Series is exactly what it sounds like. The Padres and the Dodgers are playing a series against each other in Seoul, South Korea. South Korea is a major hub for baseball, much like Japan. They have a league, the KBO. For those who remember, was one of the few sports going on during the height of the pandemic, where they had those cardboard cutouts out there. So South Korea is a big baseball city, or country, I should say. Seoul is a big baseball city. So you have the Dodgers and the Padres in there. First game of the MLB season happened today. The Dodgers took it home, winning 5-2. This was a tight game. It was tied at 2 in the 8th inning when Gavin Lux hit a ground ball that went through the glove of the Padres' first baseman. He had it in the glove. It broke through the glove. It wasn't a super hard hit grounder. It just broke the strap on his glove, and that allowed the Dodgers to open it up, score 3 runs. It was an RBI single, then Mookie Betts drove him home, and then Shohei Ohtani did his thing. He drove that last run in. Shohei Ohtani had an incredible game. Shohei Ohtani's first game with the Dodgers after signing that huge contract. He goes 2 for 5 with an RBI. It's a big game for him. He didn't hit a home run, but having him out there, he was incredible. That Dodgers lineup is scary. It's going to be very, very not fun for people to have to deal with them. But like we said, this was the first official game of the MLB regular season, which is a little odd to me, to not have opening day be actual opening day. I know they're doing a world tour thing, but this seemed more like a preseason game to me than anything else, and I don't quite get the decision by the MLB to make this a regular season game during spring training. There's a whole bunch of other games going on right now, actually, that are part of spring training. So the fact that the Dodgers and the Padres are going to play 3 regular season games and then do opening day, it's a weird decision for me. And I don't love it, but they're just trying to expand the game. Obviously, baseball needs to expand the game with everything that's going on with them here in America. But the first game of the season is done. Daniel Hudson gets the win. Shea Burrito gets the loss, and Phillips gets the save. Like I was saying, my big takeaway from this game is that Dodgers offense. That Dodgers offense is very, very scary, and they can go on runs. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith as your first 4, Max Muncy in your 5. That is an elite top 5. You have Gavin Lux in the 9, and Tyler Glass now went 5 innings, 77 pitches in his first start. That's a good sign from him. Hopefully he can come back and be that Cy Young candidate pitcher that he was before. He's very good. This Dodgers team is going to be so scary. When you go and you look, they play again tomorrow. They play one more game in Seoul, and then they come back home to continue spring training. And this is my big thing with this, because I'm a big I love the idea of playing games in international countries, and I'm fine with them being regular season games too. That I don't mind. But if you're going to intersplice regular season games with spring training games, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I know outside of the baseball world, this game didn't have a lot of discussion, probably because you're doing this in the middle of March Madness. You're opening your season right as March Madness begins. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they would do this. I'm all for this Soul series. I think they should continue to do this MLB World Tour. I love that. But making a regular season game happen when you still have, for the Dodgers at least, three more spring training games. You're putting a regular season game in the middle of the preseason. It just doesn't make a lot of sense schedule wise. Making the players, it kind of gives them more injury risk. That's why the spring training is a thing for baseball, because you have to warm up for baseball, pitchers especially. Making them play a game that actually matters in the middle of games that don't matter just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I can't get behind that. Make this happen on, a different day. It doesn't have to be opening day. It could be opening day. You could do opening day in Seoul, South Korea, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to put it in the middle of the spring training. The Padres also have two spring training games right after they get back from Seoul, so I don't know. Either have this either have this be a regular season game and not come back and play more baseball in the spring training, or just have it happen a little bit later, or make it a spring training game. Either of those things happen. This felt like a spring training game, honestly. It really did when I was watching it. It felt like a spring training game. I got up early. It was happening. I live on the East Coast. So it was happening at 6 in the morning. Um, it just felt like a spring training game. I know they had all their players out there. It was a normal lineup and everything, but it just did not feel like a real regular season game because spring training is still going on for every other team. So it was just an odd decision, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about that. But it was an odd decision for the MLB to throw this in the middle of spring training. Uh, but yeah, those were my big takeaways. Shohei Ohtani is great. The Dodgers are scary. They are probably World Series favorites. Um, but yeah, it's a baffling decision. It really is to do this. So Soul Series, we'll see what happens in day two. The day two matchup is gonna be Joe Musgrave taking on Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So that's gonna be a big game. You get the debut of Yoshi Yamamoto, who the Dodgers just got from Japan. He makes his debut in Korea, a little closer to home than he will be for the rest of the season. But that is a game I'm very excited for because if you watched Yoshi Yamamoto pitch uh, in the World Baseball Classic, he was nasty, and he's been so good in the Japanese Baseball League for so long. There's a reason he got a $325 million contract. There's a reason he's being touted as one of the best pitchers in baseball already, and he hasn't even made his debut. He's going to be so much fun to watch. If you are a baseball fan at all, I highly recommend you check out this game tomorrow. It is a regular season game, so it's going to matter. They're going to have their guys out there. Yamamoto will be starting against the Padres. I'm very excited for it. So that is 6:05 Eastern Time, a.m. for me. Not even 3 a.m. on the West Coast. So for all you Dodger and San Diego Padres fans that would like to watch your young stars, for all those Dodgers fans that are trying to see the first start of Yamamoto, having to get up at 3 a.m. is kind of crazy. I feel a little bad for them. Uh, so we are. It's going to be a lot of fun. Keep an eye out for that. I'm very excited for it. But anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episodes of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be back here, same time, same place tomorrow, talking about Yoshi Yamamoto's start, definitely. We're going to talk about some March Madness as it's going on. And we're also going to probably cover a little bit of a mock draft. I might put one together tonight because free agency is over. So stick around. We'll be there tomorrow. Thank you everybody so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee